A native of Chicago, Mr. McNally grew up on the west side of the city, attending Quigley High School. After high school, McNally went to St. Mary's Seminary to serve in the priesthood. After meeting a young lady, he decided to change career paths, graduating from DePaul University with a degree in business administration and management. In 1965, after being drafted 13 times and receiving education, job, and medical deferments, Mr. McNally enlisted in 1969 at 25 years old. Shortly after joining, he signed up for OCS, initially deploying to Vietnam in 1970 as a signal officer with the 23rd Infantry Division. He was reassigned to the 718th Military Police Battalion after serving 13 months in Vietnam. He served with the Illinois National Guard until 1973. Achieving the rank of captain, Mr. McNally is a Bronze Star recipient. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Timothy McNally.
Oh, well, that was my speech. So I'll just have to ad-lib from now on. You know, many speeches begin with the comment, I am humbled and honored to be here. So many speeches begin with that you got to wonder if they really are humbled and honored. I have to tell you this, I am humbled and honored. It is a privilege to be here for the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. The senior moment. When I got drafted, I got a letter in the mail 12 days before Christmas. And I didn't think that was right. That kind of irritated me. I was engaged, irritated my family, my friends, my future family. So I got the Irish up. My irritation caused me to call Lyndon Baines Johnson at the White House. Somebody answered, and it wasn't him. And the aide said to me, you want to call the Texas White House because that's where Lyndon Johnson is right now. I said, okay. So he gave me the number. I called the Texas White House, and the aide answered. And I said, really, I'd like to give the president the greetings he just sent me 12 days before Christmas, drafting me, and I think it's terrible. He said, oh, no, the president doesn't do that. The head of the Selective Service, General Hershey, does that. Let me give you his number. Well, anybody that knows me knows that I'm not shy, and I don't walk away from trouble, and I seek opportunity to overcome obstacles. So I called General Hershey, and he answered. It was his direct line. And I said, General, I'm really ticked off. You drafted me 12 days before Christmas. I think that is disruptive to the family, the friends, and it's not going to make my soldiering any better. And he said, yes, sir, you're right. We will not honor that draftee. I'll send you another one. Ignore that one. 8 weeks later, I got drafted. I went in March 27th, 1969. And the rest is almost history, except for the fact that not being shy enough, when I entered the service, they were sending me to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I thought, man, I'm 26 years old. I'm going to Little Vietnam. What chance do I have of surviving this? I mean, with the moccasins, the water moccasins, and evil drill sergeants beating me up. Well, the plane we took stopped 4 times in Illinois. We picked up other recruits. And the pilot announced that we were not going to Louisiana. We're going to Missouri because they had an outbreak of spinal meningitis in Fort Polk, and that post was closed temporarily. I said, yeah, baby. Everybody looked at me like I was nuts, but I'd rather go to Fort Polk than, I'd rather go to thank you, Leonard Wood than Fort Polk. Well, anyway, as time goes on, the situation is I signed up for OCS, and they said, well, sir, you're a personal friend of General Hershey's, so we'll get you right to the top of the line. So that was the humor of my beginning. However, when my wife, and I was married, or I wasn't married, I was engaged, but when my fiance and sister took me to 1800 Jackson for the initial induction, they brought us in this room and they talked to us about how honored we should be to be there. And then this guy comes in, he's dressed up in his Marine outfit, looking really strack, and he's unfortunately, those laws haven't been passed in our favor yet. But there's always hope. So now, at the tender age of 81, I get an opportunity to tell you about some humorous things that happened to me to get here. And the only thing I can say, I'm really glad that I made.
General here in Indiana. He retired from law just 6 months ago. Lawrence O'Neill served in the U.S. Army from 1970 to 1972, earning the rank of Private First Class. After being drafted, O'Neill became a medic and graduated from jump school at Fort Benning. He then served in Europe supporting NATO forces. O'Neill went on to earn a degree in recreation from Central State University, and he retired from the city of Dayton, Ohio, as a head life-saving instructor working in recreation and parks. Sam Pierce served on active duty in the U.S. Army from 1972 to 1978, and then in the Army Reserves until 1981, achieving the rank of Specialist 5. Pierce joined the Army as an accounting specialist and served with the 45th Finance Section in Germany before working prisoner pay with the 70th Military Police Detachment. After military service, Pierce served as a bill collector and repossession specialist. Today, he heads the annual 45th Finance Section reunion each year. Michael Seaman served from 1969 to 1996 as a finance officer, achieving the rank of lieutenant colonel. Commissioned through the Reserve Officer Training Corps, Seaman served in the Army Central Finance and Accounting Office in Long Binh, Vietnam from 1971 to 1972. After Vietnam, Seaman served at the Army's separation point in Oakland, the Panama Canal Zone, Fort Ben Harrison, Fort Meade, and Fort Knox. He is a recipient of the Bronze Star Medal. Dewey Shelton served in the U.S. Air Force as a clerk from 1958 to 1962, achieving the rank for Airman First Class. After attending basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, Shelton was stationed at Hamilton Air Base north of San Francisco, Cisco. Shelton then served at Royal Air Force Greenham Common in the United Kingdom. Terry Tabb served in the U.S. Army from 1969 to 1970, achieving the rank of sergeant. After being drafted, Tabb attended basic training at Fort Knox and then went on to Fort Polk to become an infantryman. In Vietnam, Tabb served with the 199th Light Infantry Brigade, working the Vietnam Delta under the 9th Infantry Division. After the military, Tabb worked for General Motors until his retirement in 2006. Stephen Treadwell served in the U.S. Army from 1972 to 1975, earning the rank of Specialist 4. After enlisting, Treadwell was assigned as an infantryman to the 82nd Airborne Division, earning his jump wings and the prestigious Trooper of the Month award. After the military, Mr. Treadwell served as an apprentice embalmer before starting the company as a manufacturer's representative, which he still does today. Keith Wallace served in the U.S. Navy from 1958 to 1962, achieving the rank of Aviation Maintenance Hydraulics Second Class Petty Officer. After enlisting in Indianapolis, Wallace attended boot camp at Great Lakes Naval Station and attended A school at Naval Air Station Milton before shipping off to Pawtucket Naval Air Station. He then served on an airborne early warning squadron deployed to Newfoundland, maintaining aircraft flying the barrier in which the North Atlantic and North Pacific, which was on the early warning defense line. Wayne Yankovic served in the U.S. Air Force from 1968 to 1974, and then in the Air National Guard out of Terre Haute from 1990 to 1994, achieving the rank of Technical Sergeant. Initially drafted in the Army after attending college at East LA College, Yankovic was able to enlist in the Air Force as a supply specialist. He served in Vietnam with the 43rd Combat Support Group at Cam Run-Berry, where he also performed duties as a part-time loadmaster on C-7 and C-130 aircraft. After leaving Vietnam, he was stationed at Cannon Air Force Base and March Air Force Base, and after the military, Yankovic worked for Flying Tigers and FedEx, where he retired in 2020 after 30 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a resounding round of applause for all of our veterans honored here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. Having to ad-lib here for a second. Please remain standing and direct your attention to the POW MIA table and flag for the playing of taps by Sergeant First Class Thomas Brunel. Please remain standing for the retirement of the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. Thank you all for joining us here today. Service to soldiers, this will defend. And I've been
General Rainey, thanks again for your remarks. As our last panel comes to the table, that panel titled Continuous Transformation, Scaling Change at Speed, will be led by Lieutenant General Richard Formica. Sir, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning. You don't have to leave. Les, thank you for the introduction, for your service in our Army, and for all you and AUSA does for our soldiers, civilians, and families every day. Thanks for organizing this symposium. It's been a great 2 days, and we're looking forward to following General Rainey with this panel. We're going to focus on continuous transformation, scaling change at speed. And you heard my question to General Rainey about at the enterprise level, what are the challenges we've talked about throughout the course of this week as we try to get technology to units faster, transform and contact. How does that translate to scalability across an enterprise? Army's a big army. And then what are the challenges for sustainability? So jump-started by transformation and contact. Continuous transformation also includes deliberate transformation and concept-driven transformation. And we've heard a little bit about all of that this week. Army's large and complex. Scaling change at speed presents a challenge. It's one thing, as I said, to rapidly bring emerging technologies to a portion of the force. It's another to bring transformation across the Army in the operating force, and then supported by the generating force across .mil-PF. We're going to build on the insights that General Rainey just offered and what you've heard during the course of the week. AUSA's assembled a really strong panel with 2 experienced CFT directors and partners from industry from emerging technologies that we've been talking about, land-based autonomy and drones. And they're going to share their thoughts on the opportunities and challenges of scaling change at speed. So with that, I want to introduce our panel. Brigadier General Kane Baker is the Director of Future Vertical Lift, cross-functional team at United States Army Futures Command. Brigadier General Rory Crooks, the Director of Long Range Precision Fires, cross-functional team, United States Army Futures Command. Mr. Scott Sanders, the Chief Growth Officer at Forterra. And then Mr. Ryan Gurry, the CEO and co-founder of PDW Performance Drone Works. Each of our panel members will offer opening comments. Then we should have about 45 minutes to respond to your questions, and we're looking forward to those. We'll finish with each panel member having about a minute to provide closing remarks. So with that, General Kane, sir, or General Baker.
Hey, sir, I don't think we should have our feelings hurt people walking out. Tomorrow's the first day of turkey season in the state of Alabama, so I think they all rushed out to get their turkey calls together. So
More importantly, today's opening day at Nat Stadium.
Yeah, all right. So plus I'm on the clock here, so I just chewed in some time for General Formica pulls me off. Hey, thanks for letting me join the team here this morning. So, we talk about continuous transformation and the ability to scale capability. Inside of FVL and the CFTs, and probably across all the CFTs, there's really 3 guiding principles that we go by. The first piece, and we've all talked about it, General Rainey just mentioned it, the global landscape is changing at a very rapid pace. And what's doing that, I think, is a lot with technology. And when you look at that technology, the ability for us as CFTs, the CDIDs, the requirements owners to get emerging capability in the hands of soldiers so we can get immediate feedback and can develop that capability into our requirements inside of our doctrine is a key principle that helps guide how we do things in the CFT. The second principle, and I'll build off of this with examples, the second principle is it's that partnership with industry that we go along this path together. And, General Rainey said it just as a combat commander looks at his partners in that geographic area. We do that also with industry, but we do it with a mindset of expanding an industrial base so we can actually scale. And I'll talk about my examples here in a minute. The last piece here is we know this rapid pace is going to be an iterative approach. And we're not just looking for a one-type capability that we buy, we park it inside of a formation, we put it in an AHA and leave it. That is not the partnership that we're doing with industry. It's an iterative, agile approach that we broaden the capability across multiple partners so we can scale quickly, scale as quickly as possible when the need is there. So the examples I'll use. So the first example that kind of, uses those three principles and that are underpinned by this is the first one is our launched effects. So launched effects was really a concept just a few years ago from the idea is how do you extend sensing capability and lethality out hundreds of nautical miles for the commander? It's back to that mass and precision. And how do we do it in a capability at echelon, brigade, division, corps, theater, MDTFs? How do we do that to drive, one, survivability for these assets, and how do we do it in mass with the idea of putting this in type of a swarm wolf pack concept to give our ability to extend range into integrated air defense, command and control systems, integrated fire complexes. With that concept, there was a relationship that formed very quickly with multiple industry partners. And when I talk about launched effect, there's a couple critical components. One, the platform itself, the payloads that you need to be able to penetrate and to go look at those enemy systems that I talked about. It's the mission system on board, the network required for the swarms to talk internally and externally, and also back to the precision fires that Rory will talk about. But the critical part of this was the role of autonomy and really the collaborative behavior. So this concept tied to a partnership with industry drove us down this path to have an aerial launch effect capability. We wanted it to come off of an aviation platform. So we had an industry base that allowed us to do that. Last year, we realized, hey, we don't not only want it coming off of an aviation platform, we wanted to be able to come off of a ground capability. And, within the last year, we went in, updated the requirement document, expanded the industry base to do this off of multiple platforms, both air and ground. And just coming out of Project Convergence this year, we had a launched effect off of a Bradley fighting vehicle out of a tow tube with a very low integration cost, minus just the tow sleeve itself, and no modifications to that vehicle. That was very quick, and it drove multiple vendors, multiple partners that came together to deliver that capability. So that is one example inside of launched effects. The other aspect in launched effects is where we are in the program right now. Just in the last month, a solicitation to a ton of vendors that we wanted to bring a capability out to a corps and a division, which drove a selection of 3 different industry partners that drove them to link in with autonomy and payloads. So 3 different systems on our short range capability that we will take out to a corps division, a combat aviation brigade, a soft element, and a fires element, that we will put that capability in the hands of soldiers this year to continue to test it and then potentially make a decision of, where do we go with it next and how many do we buy in limited quantities. Another example of working with industry this year, we do an FVL and experimentation called EDGE out at the Western Terrain area. We focus very specifically this year on autonomy and collaborative behavior, send an RFI out to industry that we wanted to bring them out to this test range and put them up against a series of threats at echelon. That solicitation drove us to review all these documents to see where we are on best in breed on autonomy. Ended up down selecting 6 vendors. We brought them out and we put them through a test range against actual enemy capability. That feedback is now driving our requirements documents that we're taking back into the building this year to get updated, that will continue to drive competition across multiple vendors. So it's the constant learning, the feedback, and the agile adaptation of where we are on behaviors. So, sir, what I'll just close here is continuous transformation only works with partnership with industry. It is a very close team capability. And the more partners that we look in, like, for example, Launched Effects, General Rainey gave the example on the brigade level UAS. We did that inside FVL. Expanding that base is the thought process, is how do we scale when we need to? How many partners do we have in here? How many partners are delivering payloads, platforms, autonomy? And as we work that and we compete it and we update it, it will eventually lead to, when we need to scale, we have multiple places to go to, multiple vendors, so we can bring a capability like FLRAA, like Launched Effects, and future UAS systems at the brigade level is the whole intent of how we're going about this, back to those three principles I laid out. So, sir, I'll hold there and hand it over to Roy.
Great, thanks. General Crooks.
Hey, thanks everybody for sticking around and really helping us follow up on an important topic that General Rainey teed up for us. General Formica runs a pretty tight ship, so I'm going to keep it to 2 points, and then I know I'm going to pass to Scott Sanders. He's going to elaborate on some of it. But the 2 points I want to make is that, at the risk of sounding like a acquisition professional, which I'm not, we have to optimize for production versus performance. And that matters to the things that I deal with in my portfolio. The second is we have to reframe our requirements to incentivize that. You heard General Rainey mention that, and that is absolutely what we need to do to make this happen. So to walk you on to target, I'll put it from the perspective of my portfolio, why we need to do those two things: optimize for production and reframe our requirements to incentivize that. I'm about 2.5 years into this position as the director. Wish now, looking backwards, I had an opportunity to change the name, because Long Range Precision Fires cross-functional team, it really puts an overemphasis on precision, and it's sometimes at the expense of mass. And what we've found in a lot of the studies that we've done so far is that at echelon there are different ratios, but we absolutely need precision. We need mass, and as General Rainey framed out, and what Kane does very much in his portfolio with Launched Effects, we need mass precision. So if that is what we need at different ratios at echelon, particularly where we are at the higher echelons, we need more in terms of precision. As we get to lower echelons, division and brigade, that scale of mass starts to increase. And what we need to scale that mass, I'm afraid that our paradigms that we use right now for acquisition are not helping us get there. It didn't really resonate with me, or I didn't think twice about the term that we use in acquisition a lot, which is best of breed. There are certainly programs that we want to adhere to a paradigm of best of breed and get the most value for the taxpayers' money and most capability. But what we're seeing for things that I need to scale, like mass or mass precision, is that doesn't lend itself well to scaling in industry. What we try to get when we optimize performance is that 5% of extra performance you might squeeze out, that starts to drive the cost so high that I can't acquire these things at volume. And that's a problem for me when I need a lot of mass or mass precision. The idea of down selecting to a small number of vendors, one or two, as General Rainey mentioned, the one is just a horrible idea if we're trying to adhere to schedule risk. You know, when you only go to one and there's a problem with your subcontractor, now your schedule goes out the window. So we can't scale to the volumes or at the pace that we need if we adhere to a best of breed paradigm. So really the bottom line is we got to optimize for performance, and we have to change our requirements process to posture industry to do that for us. When we're optimizing for performance, I think, again, not to sound like an acquisition professional, but the idea of firm fixed pricing is something that really appeals to me when I look at those capabilities that we have to scale very quickly. and achieve the mass that we need to. You have to have the volumes. So the second point is, how do we change the requirements to incentivize this? I think we're on the path. And General Rainey mentioned a new way of doing things, about a year old, maybe a little bit more, called the characteristic of need statement. And although it's not recognized by any ACIDS or JCIDS process right now as a requirement, it's not meant to be initially. What it is, it's a opportunity for us to collectively frame a problem. When I say we, I'm looking at the requirement developer like AFC, looking at our acquisition of professionals, and looking at our industry partners on getting together. What's the problem? What do we know about that problem? What capabilities are out there? And how do we team up and go for that which is attainable quickly and cheaply? That is a characteristic of need statement. And what we do with that is, as we all crush on this and learn, a lot of times that learning, by the way, is just awareness of what's out there. Many times we look at things from our own views and prisms, and we don't know what's out there. Once we learn that, we're shortening our other requirements documents, like abbreviated capability development document, to help us then drive and get those capabilities quickly. But it starts with that characteristic of need statement. And when we engage with industry, we want to, I think Scott's going to talk about this, we want to avoid being too prescriptive, because for the first time in a long time, we have commercial industry getting into areas that used to be only the military domain. We have SpaceX. So now I can talk to industry that's very competent about rockets that didn't exist 10 years ago in the same way it does today. So as we change those requirements documents, make them less prescriptive, framing the problems and moving fast on them, we also have to do something that's typically not something we do in our requirements development, which is set a price range, a target for the price that we don't want to exceed, because then I can't scale these at volume, right? So we have to set in our requirements documents a fixed price or a price range or a target. And then we have to incentivize for industry to go after that. We have to come up with a tranche sort of method that General Rainey described, and certain procurement demand signals that would make it worthwhile, economically feasible for our industry partners to do that. And bottom line, to get off the stage, we're really interested in moving fast on getting to this, and we're doing it at the point that we can with the programming, the planning, programming, budgeting, and execution PPBE process that we have today. And again, we're going to anticipate success of our senior leaders in helping us with flexible funding to do that. But I'll cede the rest of my time to Scott Sanders.
Okay, thanks, Rory. That was good. Mr. Sanders, and could you put the Forterra slide up, please? There you go.
Just waiting for my light to come on. Oh, it doesn't come on? Okay, cool.
You're hot.
Can I have my notes back? I'm Scott. Yeah, I'm trying to make this fun. Like, maybe get the wave going at some point in time. Like, come on, guys. Thank you. We got one. I'm Scott Sanders. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Forterra. We build autonomous driving solutions, but really, it's not. That's not it. Like, driving from point A to point B is neat, right? Anyone been in a Waymo? It's pretty cool. There's like usefulness for that on the battlefield, but really what it's about is, how do you get high performance compute and capabilities out to the warfighter? Every defense tech company in the country is getting fired up about how do you deliver scale technology out to users. But raise your hands if you carried a pack, even in the last 30 years, it's already full, right? Do you want more things in your backpack? Our logic is that we take vehicles everywhere. Why don't we use them to be the platform to get launched effects, sensing, drone systems, C2, everything out in distributed capability, leverage that high performance compute that comes on a self-driving vehicle. And then the thing we want to talk about is, how do you do that at scale? Like, everyone says scale around here, like, yeah, let's do it at scale. It's like, Ryan, you want to sell a bunch of drones to someone? Like, yeah, he's going to sell you a bunch of drones if you buy them. But ramping up from 10 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000, like, that is non-trivial. And if you don't talk about ways to get funding, move quickly, and put it on contract, then you're never going to have the demand signal that industry needs to actually build these things at scale. Like, and let's be real, no one in DoD builds things at real scale. Like automotive scale. What's the first production run of a Camry? It's like 30,000 vehicles. We won't build that in the DoD outside of the GLTV platform like ever. So when we talk about building at scale and creating the capacity to go do that, it comes down to, okay, what are those incentives? What is industry how is the DoD and the department in general, and obviously the Army is the biggest one, going to tell industry, yes, if you build this thing, we will buy some amount of it. As much as it'd be awesome to work at like $1 billion venture-backed charity that just does cool stuff for the DoD, that's not the reality. Like these have to be sustainable businesses. That's how you get to large manufacturing scale. That's how you pull down price at scale. And a part of that is the requirements process that General Crooks was talking about, which is like, you got to treat technology like air power. Right? Anyone ever call for fire here? Like you're not telling them how to set direction deflection on the gun. You're asking for an effect at a location. There is no one in the DoD who is a generational talent in mechanical engineering, mechatronics, computer vision, artificial intelligence, and software. That's just not the reality. You're experts in everything else when it comes to massing fires, planning, long-term logistics, war plans, not on signal. But like, let's be honest, that's where all the war plans happen, guys. If only SIPR worked. So like, how do you partner those things together? How do you get people out in the environment, and those people being engineers from the industry who now are working at defense tech companies? They don't want to work at Facebook anymore. They don't want to design the next app emoji, as cool as that is. And everyone who's sent a Ghibli image in the last 24 hours knows what I'm talking about. If you don't, check Twitter. It's really cool. They want to come work on these super hard problems. They have to get reps with your users and like make a controversial statement here. Soldier touch points aren't it. You've got to give it to users and have them take it for a deployment cycle, 18 months. Like when I was in, lowly Marine officer back in the day, someone will come out with some widget right before a capstone event. And they're like, hey, while you're getting evaluated to see if you're like any good at your actual job, please also take this new piece of technology you've never trained on and go do something neat with it. And you're like, yeah, dude, I'm for sure not doing any of that. I'm going to go write my op order in the corner and hope I don't get screamed at by my OPSO. Ironically, that guy's now my COO, so I just still get yelled at. And so you got to give it for a long period of time, and it's actually not that expensive. SOCOM has fielded more fully autonomous robots to its formations for less than $1 million than the Army has with $1.7 billion. It's not about money. It's not about drive. It's about doing it. Like, what are we so scared of? Is someone going to shave our heads and send us to Syria if we buy like $2 million of stuff and give it to a user? If it works, doesn't work, you get feedback. We have to change that mentality. Acquisition reform is done. You have all the rules. The forged action shrines some of those from mays till shall, because sometimes the department likes to interpret the may as like, maybe. No, shall. Buy the stuff, get it to users, get feedback, put engineers from those companies in the field, and then like you don't have to go buy it all at once. Set trancheable production orders that are actually doable, set price limits, and going back to treat us like air power, tell us the effect you want at the price you want it. It's no different than a Cas9 line. I want to do this. This is my budget. Tell me how we do it. And do it on a firm fixed price basis and hold vendors accountable. They want to be held accountable. And with that, hand it over to Ryan.
Thanks, Scott. Morning. Yeah, so my name is Ryan.
Excuse me. Can we get the PDW slide up there?
Yeah, you can leave mine up. It's fine.
It's a busy. Scott's slide was a lot nicer. Yeah, so my name is Ryan, CEO PDW. We build small systems for warfighters, tactical systems. We're not trying to boil the ocean here, but we make radios, small drones, tactical style for single units, and what you see on the edge in Ukraine and Russia. And we build for scale, and we build for disruption. Just a little background on PDW. We're actually an offshoot of a TV show called the Drone Racing League. we were building advanced radio systems and industrial robotics so we could go live on ESPN, NBC, and travel the world. A few years into that, we found ourselves training Tier 1 special forces. We met our CTO. And, in these training sessions, we started to see, FPV and small tactical drones could do things in 3D space that were very unique. And, we started to understand that there was a massive technology gap between what was being fielded and what was currently, available. And a few years down the road, we convinced our venture backers to move our entire company from Manhattan to Huntsville, so we could establish, greater defense culture. We're actually opening up our second facility to 90,000 square feet. We have a ribbon cutting in 2 months. If anybody wants to come, you're more than welcome. It's on Diamond Drive. We're very excited. But yeah, we make today. We're deployed to a handful of TIC brigades. We make a medium-style quadcopter that comes out of the back of a rucksack. It's deployed for a variety of different mission sets. Can host FPVs, lethality, targeting, ISR, and we built this company to support speed, to accommodate the gap in technology, and that's what we saw early in 2017. We have a few things that are different. We have combat veterans in executive positions where they are in charge of engineering and the product roadmap. They are also in charge of customer facing, and that's how we kind of close the gap. In all of this, time is the main factor. And, the TIC initiative is built essentially like a startup, where iteration and trial and error are the most important facets for success. And all of this boils down to how do you assemble an engineering team and push that engineering team to be much more upstream into flight operations and testing, so that we can field fast iteration cycles, but also account for, hardened testing and stability that you would expect in an aerial asset. So we squeeze those two groups together. And ultimately, this is about getting feedback from your customer as fast as possible to integrate that feedback back into the engineering team. So speed is really the name of the game. More than half our company today is deployed against future requirements. And that includes manufacturing and operations, everything can go into it. And, to really do that, we work out on a ledge, using intuition from, veteran-led and an amazing engineering group that's been around for quite a while. But ultimately, we work with, organizations like USASOC, SOCOM, and Five Eyes to understand what the bleeding edge requirements are. Today, we're working, we were just out on 9 Mile doing STAG-5 laser target designation off of a Group 2 asset to have precision fires downrange. We're working with APNT and visual navigation so that we could fly in contested GPS theater. We have, marsupial drops with FPV and signal relays, so we can go out, pretty far with an FPV using a mothership, lethality, and that list goes on and on. We have CRADAs with DevCom and SOCOM, and we show up. We're at, Apex, AWE, we're in Arctic Strike last week, and we push really hard for fly days, for participation, anytime that we can be in the field with a customer. Whether it be fun or just for learning, that's core to what makes our business successful and what we believe will allow us to grow over the years. We're a venture-backed company, so we love growth. We love tech. We love fast fielding. In terms of scale, it's very important to look at scale in design for manufacturing. There are lots of different techniques to get area vehicles through fast manufacturing and into fast testing and scalability. That is probably the most important principle for scale. How you design for manufacturing, how you get that done quickly, your suppliers, your CNC, your sheet metal, everything goes into that. And I can talk about that at length, but it's pretty boring. For industry, we look to really understand demand signal. And you can only do so much of that with, open intel and understanding. But, combat veterans, again, in product and senior management are huge, and being as close to your customer as frequent as possible and going out on a limb every chance you can is really important. That's how you bring capability gaps to industry sooner. And really keeping a strict backlog, maintaining focus, pivoting with your customer, and making sure that you have a strong priority in your backlog. You can't do everything at once. Yeah, and we all know this, but streamlining events in coordination with end users to conduct trial and error is the name of the game, right? So as fast as we can get to the tick brigades, understand what we are doing wrong and how to improve is what we are after. That data is essential. And communication between technical experts and industry needs to be constant and collaborative. So our SEs, our whole GTM team, our engineering team, we're one single group. We meet weekly, bi-weekly to understand what our flaws are. And, I think a lot of that is built on startup methodology. I think it gets a lot harder with hardware and the scale of hardware and, lumpiness of procurement. But that cycle, and as fast as you can repeat it and get out there, is ultimately what's going to yield success. And that's what I think industry really needs to wrap their head around. Sometimes you fail faster, but that's the idea.
Okay, thanks. Hey, the panel did a great job of sticking to their time so that they left room for your questions. So I please, as Alex comes around, I invite you to send your questions up. I want to start off with a question that gives you an opportunity to expand on kind of the theme of the panel. We heard from General Rainey that the Army's transformation priorities are ambitious, and we want to move out quickly. I'd like each of you, and you can go in whatever order, however you feel moved to respond. If you could tell, what is the one most significant enabler to bringing change at scale, or scaling change at speed, and what's, from your perspective, and what's the biggest inhibitor or challenge? Biggest opportunity, biggest inhibitor. Who wants to go first?
You guys are all taking notes.
All right,
All right, I'll take the bait.
go.
It's a cultural problem, right? You want to think about the department as like a single buyer environment, just from like a market perspective. It's really not, right? You get the right person on the right team, whether it's a PEO or it's an end user who wants to get something done, like they'll figure out a way to get it done. The biggest inhibitor is probably going to offend some people. It's the community of, oh, we could do that here. And when I was a user, this was a problem. We were trying to roll out ATAC back in 2014 to MARSOC formations, and I got about 6 NIP blocks for trying to do that. Because, we have kill switch. It was like a fight over 2 GOT solutions. And one was pretty bad, and I think it's gone now, and TAC lived on, and I've been since vindicated from my captain level NIP blocks. But there's this pride of ownership and creation thing, and there's also this logic that the DoD can build software. And if the DoD is qualified to do anything, it's build direct fire weapon systems. Pretty sure you guys have been doing it since before this was a country, and you don't do that anymore. You hire Daniels Defense, SIG, or whoever else. And so it's a cultural problem. You have all the rules, you have all the authorities, you can use fun contracting methods, everything from OTs to 4023s, which are not OTs, fall in more obscure sports quarterly contracting methodologies. But the technology and the policy exists. You have to want to do it. And you have to enable people in the formations that are 04s, 05s to say, yeah, I want to go take this bet. I want to move the needle and deploy some technology quickly to prove that this meets a need that I have. And then let the acquisition community take it from there. The biggest enabler is it's the same thing. It's the enabler there is change. The Army's changing quickly than it changes the requirements. Shots fired. I was a Marine, so I can say. But that's it. It's people. It's enabling people to make those changes and go on a limb and take some risk, and not nip locking them for it every time it happens.
Okay, thanks. Rory?
Hey, sir, I'll take a swing on it. I think that we understand how we got here. Probably, if we take a historical look on, with civilian control of the military, and really the military's bad behavior, probably over time when we squandered opportunities that our civilian leadership gave us with our resources. So to counter that, we have layers of bureaucracy that have been, for the right reasons, imposed upon us. But as we've seen the scale of and pace of change accelerate in ways that, that we couldn't imagine generations from now or generations ago, the challenge that we have, or the biggest inhibitor to scaling that I see today, is trying to achieve consensus on what we need. So mention the requirements process. When a requirements process takes too long, the ability to gain consensus on one fixed item, one problem set, it leaves when some leadership changes out. And you now have new leadership come in sometimes and re-adjudicate. And we go into a process that just gets extended in ways that we can't reconcile with our PPBE process. If you think about it, if we adhered strictly to PPBE, we would have to completely understand what we need 5 years from now, and what changes in the environment that we're going to anticipate in that time, and then maintain consensus for 5 straight years. I think we can probably do the first part. We can't maintain consensus for 5 years on those that are stakeholders that have the ability to say yes. So that's the challenge. I think if we can't somehow bake in and give flexibility to those stakeholders that can gain consensus from what we're seeing, I think we're probably, it's going to be a hard problem to solve. Flip that, and what's the best enabler? I think what we use to get consensus really quickly are the experimentation opportunities we've taken. I'm really excited about what we've done in Army Futures Command in putting our resources and our emphasis and efforts behind where our verbs, or where our words are, in making sure that we have persistent experimentation so that we can bring in industry partners, we can bring in our ASALT partners, and we can contextualize what it is we're trying to solve right here in the dirt. And you all look at it the same way, and it's like, I've got something in my backyard, or in my garage, that it can do that. We can gain consensus there in those experimentation venues in ways that we can really capitalize and move fast on. But if we can get the flexibility of the funding, once we achieve that consensus through experimentation, then we can move fast.
That's good. Thank you. Want to go?
Yeah. So I'll start off on the enabler piece and try not to sound so negative here. The enabler is, look, we've been in this space now, CFTs, AFC, for quite a few years. We know what is out there. We know where industry's at, and that constant understanding back and forth, like, hey, we've got capability, we can solve your problem, let's move out. The inhibitor is really back to the requirements. And so, we talked about threshold and objectives earlier. What I would rather do is, as we go through experimentation, to help write our requirement documents, but at the end of the day, we don't ever share the requirements with industry. We never actually lay out, here is the threshold and objective. What goes out is an RFI for a very small portion of the buy. And instead of a really controlled environment where we go, hey, appreciate all the help, we've got an approved requirement document, come in individually, we'll sit you down, we'll walk you through what the requirement document says. And then tied to that requirement document is the ability to just go out and buy tranches, buy portions of the capability. This is going to drive industry. You see the full spectrum that we want, and then you drive your product, you drive your company, you drive your collaboration with other industry partners to drive this entire program. But instead, it's kind of, we show experimentation, pull it back in, we write a requirement, we kind of pull it back in and hide it, and the next time you see it is through an RFI or through a solicitation. I think it has to be a continuous process. Until we start doing that, I think we're going to be in the same position we are right now, is we come out and you're just waiting to know, hey, when can we actually buy something? I've been a champion of the fact that at an experimentation event like Project Convergence, or even my own event at Edge, is I want to do an event and then make a notification like, hey, I'm ready to buy you now. And just not to continue on this, but we brought in a technology at Edge this year that a company brought it in and said, hey, we want to show you the ability to map from an aerial system, send that digital mapping down to a ground robotic, so now they can operate inside of inside of an urban area. We tested it and we were like, holy smokes, this is really good. Like really good. We brought it out, Project Convergence, put it through the ringer out there, said, wow, this is better than we thought. We got feedback from the op forum. Now we want to go put it in a unit. I want to tie it with a PDW. I want to tie it to a Ghost. I want to tie it to, a ground vehicle. But as Roy said, it'll take me 1.5 years to get that approved. We'll then have to send it back out, and y'all won't understand the requirement, and then you'll have to compete it and not really understand where the space is at. So I'll hold there.
Excellent. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, very different from your guys' perspectives. From my end, the biggest inhibitor and enabler is the ground war in Europe, alongside all the disruption it's having with commercial technology. I think that there's a lot of disruption coming out of that crucible, but not all of those things carry over to American, doctrine and defense. And, on our side, our backlog and the amount of noise that we see in the space is pretty heavy. What's going to work long term? What is safe? What is secure? There's disruption happening, with radio systems and electronic warfare, with attributable systems and one-ways, and our enemies having access to somewhat modern technology. I think that it takes a lot to understand what's relevant for the U.S. requirements, and it takes a lot of back and forth with industry, engineering, our veteran leadership, and our customer ultimately to really decide what is the best to invest into. Our backlog, I think currently at our company goes back like 5 years of all the things that we see out there that we really, are interested in, but really prioritizing those, understanding what's going to work in the next 5 years, what to invest into over the next decade is critical. And, at this time, really hot and heavy, right? There's a lot of vapor, a lot of different things, and a lot going on across defense tech, the VC market in defense and industry and worldwide. So I think like the ground war in Europe has shown light to what's possible, but how you cast that and move forward with that with customer and industry is something to be very careful about. And I think that's why we have veteran leadership at the tip of our product and essential to some of the success we see.
Okay, thanks. Hey, next question. Colonel Trish Sellers, thanks for this. Good to see you out there. I actually could have written this myself, so I like this one. I know that we've talked about it in the panel, so I'm going to give them an opportunity to respond to it. But her question is, excuse me, as General Rainey mentioned, multi-vendor contracts and tranche buys, how do you balance the logistics requirements for maintenance and provisioning for parts versus wanting commonality and lower price points for logistics? And how do you value those trades?
I'll answer just from my space. I think it's a great question. It's a great point. And so when I look at the unmanned space from a standpoint of UASs, launched effects, this idea of an attritable system. Now, this is completely different when you start talking high-end equipment like FLRAA, AML, and the stuff that Rory's doing. But I think we're very hung up right now as, hey, how do you sustain a Group 2? How do you sustain a launched effect that's attritable? I think we've got to get beyond that mentality, and we've just got to say, hey, it's attritable. We're going to use it. We'll resupply it. Now, like a UAS, a Group 2 or Group 3, yeah, we should be able to repair some capability for it in the field and not just want a new whole device. But it is a different culture shift than we've seen before. And personally speaking, even as we field Group 1s and Group 2s right now, we're not treating them as attritable capability. We're not. We're giving it to soldiers, and they're keeping it in the mill van, and they're afraid to fly it because they're going to be held accountable, and they're not going to be able to PCS to go to the captain career course. Until we get into that demand cycle that's going to drive how many we really need, that's going to drive the growth that we're going to really need, I think we're going to be stuck in, well, how do you sustain all this stuff? So I think it is a cultural shift. I think we need to put a larger demand on it in our training. There's capability right now, that Ryan has that we just put over in Germany, and it's going to deploy. So we're going to get a piece of that. In the attritable space, I don't think we need to get tied up as much in is how we're going to sustain all this. Now, there's a lot of other different areas that we're testing and we're growing that we do have to worry about that. And that model will play out. So, but my focus area is really the attritable aspect. So
I'll take a swing, and then I'm going to pull in Scott on some of this. To your point about when you're looking at attritable systems, and we know that these systems, if you just use Ukraine as an example, they may have a shelf life of 2 weeks, 30 days. How do we scale that? How do we, and if sustainment that we're worried about, we might be looking at it maybe through the wrong lens, or maybe not. I think for launched effects, for those things that we know the countermeasure cycle is so fast that instead of trying to come up with buying the best capability and scaling that quickly, we have to approach this as we would if we were preparing a meal, right? We know that meal, once we bake it or once we cook it, is perishable. It's only going to last for a certain amount of time. You got to eat it or you don't. Instead of going for that meal and hoping to buy a lot of that at once, we got to buy the right ingredients and to have a menu of options that we can possibly scale. So, the food industry knows how to scale food, right? They buy a lot. They don't buy a lot of finished product. They buy a lot of ingredients, and they know that they have chefs that can somehow mix and match these ingredients to get something that will actually work. And even though that thing is perishable over time, I think that's a way that we can get after that. And the sustainment part of it is simply, how do we get line replaceable units? How do we get some things that are software defined, that we can quickly change and not upset the overall design? Once we have a good, stable design, if we can have a lot of components that we can interchange and throw into the mix of chaos that allows us to overcome countermeasures that are developed, then we have a way of moving forward. Scott, what were the 4 words you had on your slide?
Build, test, deploy, repeat.
So the idea of being able to create a design, put it in a unit's hands, allow it to fail, while in the background, Scott and his team are figuring out, okay, that didn't work, and I've already got to change for that. That we should be comfortable with that. It shouldn't be, well, you bought it, if you can't keep it, you can't have nice things. We have to get away from that and allow these things to break, allows our soldiers to break when we put them in transformation and contact units. And if that doesn't work, if we're still not fast enough, I'm going to pass to Scott, because I know a lot of what he does with Forterra is as a service. And that gets us out of a lot of that sustainment business, and it puts into people that are really good, in the hands of people really good.
Yeah, that scares the living shit out of acquisition officers, though. So let's not say as a service anymore. Just kidding. I'm going to start calling mechanical engineers soft hardware chefs now, though. So that's take that back. Look, it comes down to incentives. One, the DoD, you love to own things. You love a DD-250. I want to buy a thing. I want to get a widget. I want to put it in a warehouse. I'm going to feel really good about it every time someone goes and does a CMR or whatever they call it in the Army. And we're going to keep track of all of our things. And here's all our widgets. And we're going to take them to war one day. That's like not how anything else works in life. When you think about cars, homes, anything else you lease, you rent, the industry has figured out how to do sustainment. It's called give us the right incentives. If you buy a thing for a firm fixed price with a defined set of, what you're going to get out of it, then we can go back and say, all right, we know how often this product's going to fail. And if we're on the hook, at some point with some amount of data, which comes down to you got to get things in the field so we can figure out what's going to fail. But once you get it out and you say, hey, I'm going to pay, we'll make up numbers, $10,000 a year for a warranty. If that's my firm fixed price top line on it, and the first year my product failed every time, and it was a $5,000 part that failed 3 times, hey, guess who's getting locked in a room until the problem is solved? It's the mechanical engineers, it's the mechatronics guys, it's the production engineers. Why is that part failing? Oh, it's this $300 Amphenol connector that just doesn't hold up under duress. So we're going to go redesign a new part, get it into test, take it back out, see if that solves the problem, because it hits our bottom line. If our warranty costs exceed what we're charging you, that's like really bad times. And it should be a fair price. And there's ways to determine this. Like Apple figured this out with AppleCare, right? Does everyone here use AppleCare or whatever Samsung version is? I put my phone through a snowblower 2 years ago, and I had a new one the next day. Snowblower. It actually still worked, which was shocking. But like they've figured out, okay, this is what I have to charge across this wide deployment of platforms. I have to pre-stage this amount of hardware forward because I have this SLA that I've signed up for. Give vendors SLAs, charge a firm fixed price. We will find a way to make that profitable, or we'll lose money and we will no longer be in business. Like, it's that simple. We don't need the DoD to be like, hey, we think that like this widget should be like forward staged here, and we're going to pre-buy a bunch of these things and we're going to stage them. 2 years, that part's going to be obsolete. Like, it doesn't work. But in order to get that data, you have to get formations with hundreds of systems in users' hands, and you have to get the data back so you can do predictive maintenance, right? What was the first CDAO experiment? It was predictive maintenance for Humvees. The problem is there's no actual electronics on a Humvee, right? There's like some, but like barely. Like, you're just stoked if the mirrors are there and the gas gauge works.
And the doors.
No, those are optional. You don't need those. It's better without. And so like, as you go to more software-defined vehicles, you start to know everything that's happening on a platform. No different than a drone, no different than a complex missile system. But we have this we're just terrified of connecting things to networks. We're not like, that shouldn't be scary. Like, certify the network, put that in your plan from an acquisition perspective. So you can say, hey, the requirement is I want to know where all these things are, what they're doing. And then that vendor can know, okay, I know what's going to fail. And if I'm on a firm fixed price sort of warranty model, then I'm going to go replace things before they fail because I'm incentivized by SLAs. And then if you're really good, you will make a very profitable company doing that. But it's only if you're good. It's only if the delivery to the warfighter is they have to touch less things, they need less FSRs. But every time the incentive is deploy as many FSRs as possible, you're going to get, from a contracting perspective and from a dollars perspective, you're going to get a product that requires a lot of service and support in the field. And you don't want that. But the idea of as a service just terrifies people. But we do as a service every day in our personal lives, right? You have Netflix, you have subscription food services, like, it's everything. Give the right incentives, industry will respond to those incentives, and they'll deliver a better product to warfighters.
So let me just follow up. Your thoughts on affordability and scale across all of the systems in an army on everything you just said. You think, or do you think that is the solution to affordability and scale?
Companies respond to incentives, just like people. If you tell industry, I'm willing to spend this much for this many, industry will come back and say, well, you can get X capability versus Y. You want this bespoke weird thing over here. You want to have, SIPR on the move for this small little widget, or you want type 1 encryption on your UAS platform. Like, that drives cost. Right. And if you have the trades in front of you, like everything in life is trades, then you make trades. And I just think it's a more straightforward way to, whether you're developing the next generation combat helicopter or you're developing a small drone, it all comes down to trades. Trades drive cost. Incentives drive output from industry. Give the right incentives. You're doing a cost plus fixed fee. You're doing it on T&M. You're driving the wrong incentive. The incentive is to add more labor. It's to sell more metal. That shouldn't be it. And everyone's wrapped around the axle like, ooh, what if their profit margins are high? Sick. That's a great business. It's going to develop more stuff and build more capability for the warfighter. Now they got to be doing it in a way that's like, you're getting the right price for the right system.
Right.
But like, what's the profit margin on an iPhone? It's like 75% gross margin product. It's like $250 for the material in this thing. Everyone here happily pays $1,200 because it delivers that capability to you. We don't freak out about that. Like, you should save billions and be able to make hundreds of millions doing it. That's just a good business that delivers good capability. We just have to be more comfortable with different business models in the space.
Excellent. Thanks. Ryan, did you want to comment?
Yeah,
Please.
yeah, absolutely. My background's in engineering. So when I think about affordability and scale, I think it ultimately comes down to decisions that you're making with the product. And I think what we're seeing, especially in the ground war, is commercial technology is really accessible. So I can go get an FPGA, I can get an SDR, IC, integrated circuit from Analog Devices and be off band. I can 3D print, CNC on the edge. I could drop CUDA cores on processor and have a supercomputer for $100. The accessibility to hardware is at an incredible place and time. And when you think about the potential of what you can do with affordability and scale, it's just amazing. For us, we're working really hard right now on our first non-attributable but consumable platform. Something we look at as a munition, as a one-time use. And the way that we go about designing that is completely different than everything we've ever done. We want a bomb that is a handful of parts. We want to sell a lethal 3D combat system for under $10,000 a piece.
God bless you.
And, but when we sit there and we put that together, we're looking at spreadsheets of the BOM, we're looking at on-the-edge manufacturing, we're looking at how fast we can iterate and scale, modularity, and, tackling that from a really pure sense. You could see the same thing happen with the Iranians and the Shahed. What's going on with, their block models. They have like 15 of them already. And the latest one on Telegram last week has a really awesome GPS array for directional guidance. There's the whole idea of attributable systems is practical hardware design and using the very latest tenets. And when I walk the floor, there still is like this classical aerospace mentality that goes into building these systems that is gone. And you have to do away with that style of engineering. You cannot be doing, we even look at injection molds as a high barrier, but you have to look at things and leverage the latest, scale in manufacturing and start from a pure place there. Ultimately, that's what's going to drive everything else. Your revenues, your profits, your speed to customer, it all comes from that. And I think when you're looking at a product and driving requirements, you have to start with the first principles. So I think attributable systems means in my head like 100,000 hours. But I think the real meat of it is when you get to a consumable system. When it's there for, you design it for 10 hours of use. Great if it gets hundreds, but that's the future. We're really excited to be in this space. We think we're at the foothills of something really special, where robotics are looked at as munitions. And there's a lot of design and care that'll go into that. And we think a lot of groups are going to step in and take part in that.
Okay, thanks. Now, this one's specific to General Crooks, but I think it has an opportunity to invite comment from some of the others as well. This said, General Rainey spoke about exquisite versus mass, and in your comments, you talked about precision mass. And what I really like, by the way, this is a Formica editorial. I liked that mass precision comment. But the question then goes on, flying drones is relatively expensive compared to 155 fire support. Drones can also be jammed. What is the Army doing to accelerate a requirement to replace the M777 and other brigade and division fire support? So it really gets to, for all of you, the question about precision versus mass. And if I were a drone manufacturer, I'd want to respond to some of those parts too. So go ahead. We're going to start with you.
Okay. The way I would have to frame this problem is, certainly if you just take a look at the price of munitions, it seems like, of course, I want more 155. Why wouldn't I want more 155? Until you look at range, it's got to be on a scale or an axis where range is, that cost is the y-axis and range is your x-axis. You're going to get very, very cheap, and you should have a lot of cheap mass at those shorter ranges. And when I say short ranges for 155, I'm not talking more than 40 kilometers. It's going to be 40 kilometers or less. I start to really see that cost curve increase, though, once I get beyond 155 ranges for traditional, like we have 39 caliber 155, so that's about 20-foot long tubes, right? That can get us easily out to 30 plus kilometers with 155, the new ones that we have. If you have a 52 kilometers, 25 or 52 caliber, a 25-foot tube, you can get more than that. You can maybe 50. But once you hit that 50, the cost curve starts to go way up. And that's where we're looking at other alternatives that we can scale. Certainly massed precision where I can leverage a lot of launched effects, either from the air or from the ground. I can achieve the deliberate fires I need to set conditions right to get our crewed systems in, our crewed aviation, for example, or rotary wing attack aviation like Canes, our fixed wing from the Joint Force. And then we can saturate our targets with the mass that we have available. I think launched effects are a big part of that. If you've heard any other panels since you've been out here, this idea of direct support fires technology, of having shorter, smaller rockets that are shorter range between that 50-kilometer and 70-kilometer range, and have these at a reasonable price point. It's going to be more than 155, but it's going to get you mass at ranges between 50 and 70 kilometers that we can really shoot a lot at once. And that's called direct support fires technology. So I think the last part of the question was, what are we doing for our platforms like M777? General Rainey mentioned directed requirements. We have a directed requirement that's been signed to get us into a competitive evaluation for a new 52 caliber. I told you the differences. We have 39 calibers, 20-foot today. Many of our partners have 52 caliber, 25-foot tubes. We have a competitive evaluation that will start in 26 that allows us to take those industry candidates, those vendors that are bring their systems over to the United States. We will do a competitive evaluation next year, and then we will down select from there, and we'll work the quantities out from there. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, anybody else want to talk about that? Because there's a couple of pieces to that question.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times we bucket drones. We just say drones, we throw it in a bucket. And we don't sparse out what the capability and the effect that we're doing with these drones. And so when you look at UAS at brigade and below, that persistent ISR capability and how many you need and what's the actual task and what we're paying for them is a lot different when you look at a launched effect. A launched effect to give you pulsed operations at extreme ranges to go after very high-end enemy assets, multi-complex integrated air defense. So when you're a commander, you're like, well, I want to fly a bunch of UASs and I only want to pay, a couple $1,000s a piece because I just want to saturate the ground so I can make the battlefield more transparent. Versus a commander at a theater, core level where it's like, hey, I'm willing to put $100,000, $150,000 into a launched effect at a long range with a very sophisticated payload, because my payoff when I do find that SA-21 or I find that integrated air defense, it's going to allow me now to open up a joint capability to come in and bring in other capability to diminish the enemy. So I think we got to be careful on how we just throw drones in the bucket and how we look at price point versus really the capability and the desired end state and kind of that cost ratio of what we're trying to do to the enemy. So I'll just leave it at that. So.
Did either one of you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just repeat the question one more time.
Well, the question as it might apply to you is drones are very expensive and they can be jammed.
Oh, well.
So how are you going to provide capability? Particularly, this question was at the division and brigade level.
Yeah, we're going to make inexpensive drones that cannot be jammed.
There you go.
Ryan,
Yeah,
what's the current price point of a 155 round?
$5,000.
What's the current price point of small loitering munitions?
Small, like a switchblade.
I mean, like your version of that, because you're on.
Well, I think that's FPV eventually, and I think that's around the same price point of a 155 round when we get there. And I think a small consumable, drone like that can also do eyes on target. You can have incredible range when you're using a mothership or a marsupial. Like we're watching people get 30, 40 clicks off of the FPV. They can fly for 35, 40 minutes. It's a different platform, so I would put less expensive payloads on it, right? We're not going to put a Stag 5 laser on a little tiny $5,000, $10,000 drone. But I think there's different classes of drones the same way there are for vehicles, and there'll be classes for a good long time. I think if it's something like a mothership, which is our flagship product, and it lifts 10 to 15 pounds, and it's for more exquisite payloads that look very far and can do laser target designation. But that's a category that's going to exist for 10 years. And then I think there's a small, some people say FPV, but consumable robotics. can fly like a DJI, can do ATR and terminal guidance, but it can also fly aggressively like you see in Ukraine. I think that's going to be used, for one-ways, for eyes on targets, for sniffing around, and can be used for scale if you need to throw a lot of them downrange. So I think, drones is a big word. There's a lot of different things inside drones. And I think the classes that we're currently looking at for the Army are fantastic. There's SRR Gen 2, which we're excited to see the requirements for, purpose-built aircraft system, PBAS, which is incredible. MRR, which we're currently down selected in. I love those categories, and I believe in the same way, small arms are categories, right? Rifles and SMGs, they're going to exist for decades. And I think they'll evolve, right? The capability is going to be more lethality and more affordability and more scale over time as the industry grows and, as we mature. But the first time a small drone was used in the ground war in Europe was like 20 months ago. So it's just happened, and I think we're responding pretty damn well. And it's an evolving thing. But I think there's going to be a time where we're going to be able to look at consumable robotics the same way we look at a 155 round.
And I think it also comes down to giving commanders multiple options
Yep.
based on the environment in which they currently find themselves.
Yeah, and I think if you look at jamming, like there's a huge industry, and jamming is also a big word. Does that mean you're GPS jamming? Does that mean you're doing tactical jamming? For select high value targets or for singular units like you see in the ground war? So for us, we have a radio system called Blackwave that we're in partnership for SOCOM. That's to penetrate electronic warfare. But there's also a huge industry of visual navigation that's made to use maps to understand where you are in the world. Palantir, Maxar, Leidos, KEF, Vermeer. There's all, Lockheed has one. There's all this industry coming to surround that. So I think there's problems that we're going to overcome over the next few years. And I think everything's going to evolve to be, consumable robotics, much more lethality, much more scale over time.
Okay, thanks. We've got about 2 minutes left. Ryan, you've got the mic. So if you want to take a few minutes or a few seconds and think about your closing comments, what do you want to leave with this audience? So start with you and we'll work our way back this way.
Yeah, I mean, I have 150 to 200 families across town in Huntsville. It's the best damn town in the world. We're opening up. We found a small facility to get us going before we were down selected for MRR. We outgrew that in 8 months, and now we're opening up our first big facility on Diamond Drive. We're picking out our flags and our logo, so we'll have a ribbon cutting event. We'll put that on our website if anybody wants to come by and join us. And this is just the best damn town to build, especially for drones. PM UAS office is here, best talent. That's my closing statement.
Well, that was a good one. Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Scott.
I'll keep it basic. Thanks for having us out here. This is a fun discussion. And look forward to seeing all the technology in the field.
Thank you. Rory.
Hey, so I like to put a little bit of historical perspective on where we have been and where we've demonstrated, the United States that is, has demonstrated institutional flexibility. It's really that interwar period. It's right before World War II started. And the idea of the Forge Act, I think that draws back to the Arthur Herman's book, Freedom's Forge, in that we took largely government designs that were stable. We took some, technology ready, equivalent of technology readiness level 6, and we handed it off to industry to mature it so they can manufacture it at scale. And then with those good designs, we postured our industry to really grow massively, and they did it in ways that our adversaries couldn't anticipate. I think we can get to that again. We just have to make a few changes. But there's no country in the world that can do it the way the United States can.
Amen.
And John Baker.
Yeah, I think we're pretty rough on ourselves. I mean, we talk about, hey, we can go faster. But I think back to when I was a captain in Baghdad flying Apaches. And I think about the capability I had then versus what a company commander has now. And we are moving the ball down. Can we do better? Yes. Can we give them more capability? But I would tell you, the formations are getting better. Now, I probably as a captain could not have handled all the capability we're putting units now today. So we've got a lot of smart young officers and NCOs out there. But we are advancing but we can only do this. And this is all finished where I started. The partnership with industry, that is the only way we're going to make our formations more lethal. And lastly, I'll just say there's a 7th grader sitting somewhere right now that we are going to ask to go to war. and they just don't know it when they get through high school and college, and they're the ones that are going to have to go off and do this. So everything we do, I doubt any of us up here will ever be in harm's way anytime soon. So the point is here is continue to make the Army better, continue to make the capability that they're going to take into the fight better. And that's our only goal in life right now. So
Thank you. And I'd like to thank our panelists for their remarks, their thoughtful comments, and their responses to your questions. I want to thank you for hanging in there with us and for your attendance and for your questions for the panel. And then, as always, thank AUSA for hosting this terrific forum. As General Rainey said, everything we're doing at this symposium is about getting capabilities into the hands of our soldiers, and so that we can take care of our soldiers, civilians, and families. They're the ones that we do this for. Thank you, and thanks to AUSA.
So for us, it's about adaptation.
I feel an urgency, and certainly the people around me feel an urgency to be ready and to change the way we do things.
Yeah, it's important to equip our paratroopers with the next generation technologies because we're seeing the character of warfare change.
It's a pretty unique charge, and especially as an infantry officer, like not what I thought I'd be doing, but really, really fun and rewarding.
We had all these, next generation technologies where our adversary didn't have those things. Now, what we're seeing from these current conflicts is our adversaries are leveraging low-cost commercial capabilities to field these next generation technologies. So for our paratroopers, one, you got to understand how to use them, but you also have to be fully attuned for how to counter them as well.
Being innovative means just not accepting that something is broken. It means trying to make it better.
We use the word innovation a lot, but it's really about evolution and adaptation.
And I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity that I've had to basically look and find problems and then try to solve them.
As we are gathering lessons from current conflicts right now, the world is watching. The world is watching. We saw this in the run-up to World War I, the Russo-Japanese War. You had observers from the entire world go out and observe a lot of the military innovations that happened during that war period. We're kind of in that period now. So as the world is watching and we're watching all of these next generation technologies, new sensing capabilities, new fire capabilities being integrated into the battlefield, it's on us to come up with a solution at the brigade level to.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Warriors Corner. Our next panel, Creating Supply Chain Resiliency Utilizing the Organic Industrial Base. Moderator for this panel will be Ms. Stephanie Hoagland, AMC's OIB Modernization Director. Thank you. Panel members include Mrs. Liz Miranda, AMC Executive Deputy to the Commanding General, Major General James Turinetta, CECOM Commanding General, and Brigadier General Gail Atkins, DLA Land and Maritime Commander.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. As introduced, I'm Stephanie Hoagland. I'm the Director for OIB Modernization and Army Materiel Command, and we've already kind of introduced the panel, but I'm going to give a little bit more of an overview of their background in just a moment. So our OIB, it's our nation's strategic force multiplier. It's crucial for material readiness, surge capacity, and supporting future weapon system platforms. From small arms to tanks, the OIB provides critical material and sustainment support, enables rapid force deployment, and provides critical material and sustainment support to all of our weapon systems. So recent global events such as the pandemic, support to international partners like Taiwan and Ukraine, as well as rising costs due to supply chain disruptions and onshoring efforts have had significant impacts to our operations. So modernizing the OIB has become extremely important because of those things. This modernization requires focused investments to mitigate supply chain vulnerabilities, reduce single points of failure, as well as decrease reliance on foreign sources. Modernizing our OIB will enable us to meet future production demands, ensure workforce safety, and ensure production continuity for large-scale combat operations. Today, we're going to take our opportunity to explore how the Army and our crucial logistics partner, DLA, are adopting new approaches to identify and address supply chain gaps, as well as build resiliency and to achieve the National Defense Industrial Strategy goals. Our discussion will focus on how DLA and the Army illuminate supply chain risks, how DLA leverages the OIB to address parts backlog, and how we utilize public-private partnerships to enhance resiliency. So I'm honored to be joined by three great panelists here. The first is Ms. Liz Miranda, who is currently the Executive Deputy to the Commanding General at Army Materiel Command. In this role, she oversees material life cycle management, acquisition support, personnel and resource management, industrial base operations, and enterprise integration for a global command of 165,000 personnel impacting operations worldwide. A member of the Senior Executive Service since 2017, Ms. Miranda's prior assignments include the Deputy to the Commanding General of CECOM, as well as the Integrated Logistics Supply Chain Director, as well as Deputy Chief of Staff for Resource Management and various other leadership roles within CECOM. To her right is Major General Turinetti, who is the 18th Commander of CECOM, our Communications Electronics Command. He's also the Senior Commander of Aberdeen Proving Ground. He leads a 9,000-person global command and oversees 28,000-person military bases, serving as the Army's C5ISR and medical material integrator. He's responsible for ensuring warfighter readiness through enabling C5ISR and medical material support. He's also served in various leadership roles throughout his 30-year military career. And then last but not least, Brigadier General Gail Atkins assumed command of DLA Land and Maritime in July of 2022. DLA Land and Maritime is headquarters in Columbus and manages almost 2.6 million spare and repair parts and supports more than 2,000 weapon systems and more than 20,800 customers throughout the military service, civil agencies, and other Department of Defense organizations. She's also responsible for more than 2,800 associates in 30 locations worldwide, to include 3 depot-level repairable detachments, Army and Marine Corps industrial sites, and 4 detachments supporting naval shipyards. She's also very familiar with the AMC enterprise, as she's a former commander of Corpus Christi Army Depot, as well as the former executive officer for the DCG of AMC from June of 2020 until May of 2021. So you see, we have a great distinguished panel with lots of experience, and it's going to provide a well-informed discussion. To enable a resilient and robust industrial base, we need it for maintaining critical military advantage. Guided by the National Defense Industrial Act, the DoD is investing in initiatives like DPA and Mantech to create resilient supply chains and support small businesses, as well as bolster American innovation and manufacturing across both public and private sectors. These investments are fortifying our industrial base while creating opportunities for groundbreaking collaboration. So with that, moving to Ms. Miranda, I'll start with you. Can you speak to the importance of the OIB and how AMC is supporting the National Defense Industrial Strategy, particularly Implementation Initiative Number 2, which focuses on production and supply chains?
Thank you, Stephanie. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that you were all able to join us. So let me start with defining for all of us, right, Initiative Number 2 of the National Defense Industrial Strategy implementation, which, as Stephanie mentioned, is production and supply chains. Specifically, what we're looking at is to address vulnerabilities and also protect resilient sourcing sources and strategies. And the OIB plays a critical role in that. So those of you that know what our organic industrial base currently does for the Army and or has historically done for the Army, quickly realize that it's a critical enabler for the Army to really sustain operations, more so in large scale conflict, right? Where we need rapid response and very key skills and artisans that know how to, in very not so good environments, right, still deliver the readiness that the Army needs at, like I said, rapid and quick response time. The OIB now more than ever, as technology continues to advance, right, needs to evolve and transform in itself so that it can sustain those highly technological advances on weapons that we are, as the Army, right, continues to transform, and we are investing in for the future fight. Which the future is not so future, right? We're advancing or leveraging that advanced technology today. So our OIB is in really needing right now to evolve and have the capability that it needs to sustain those systems of today, right? The enduring capabilities today and the capabilities of the future. So I'm going to share with you the why and the how, right? As I mentioned earlier, when we talk OIB and the expectation that it has the skills and capability and capacity to support an Army, not necessarily at home station, but deployed, right? And in a contested environment, what do we need the OIB to have so that it can quickly deploy and take care of that responsibility, right, to sustain operations anywhere, everywhere, and anytime. So what we have done as the Army continues to transform, and we have very clear modernization strategies, and I say clear because we know what we need, but those material solutions are, it's what we're exploring, experimenting with, right? But at the same time, we don't have time for our organic industrial base to wait for that modernization to be acquired and fielded. We need to start evolving our capabilities today, right? But understanding that in continuous transformation, that may change in the very near future and in the distant future. So how are we doing that? A few years ago, Army Materiel Command, in partnership with the department, and understanding what Army Futures Command concept, right, for future fights and that contested environment needs from a capabilities perspective, worked with our organic industrial base to assess where we are today from a capabilities and capacity perspective and identify the gaps that